truly believe and have data to back up that works. Why did they select the agent that they selected? You can see here it's the same answers that we got the first time around. So you don't have to be a different person working with buyers and sellers. They all want someone who's responsive and knows what they're doing. And what's the best way to show how aggressive you are? Get back to people quickly. You know, it's really a way to show professionalism. I thought this was interesting. 22% of the sellers said they had initially listed their home with another agent. For short sales, it was 43%. For regular sales, it was 8%. So huge, huge differential. And I think, again, it's just illustrative of how difficult and long-lasting those transactions are. In 2010, 24% of the sellers said social media was part of their transaction. In 2011, 77%. So this has tipped, and it's a discussion that you really should have, because what we found, we've done a couple of technology surveys, is the public saying, boy, I really wanted my realtor to talk to me through Facebook or Twitter or whatever, and they didn't do it, you know, so room for improvement. Here's a look at the expected versus actual response time. And you can see for the instant to within 1 hour, they're not getting a call back or an email back or whatever it is as quickly as they would like. So again, instantaneous 100% of the time is not realistic, but have the discussion so everybody kind of understands what's doable. So let me kind of wrap things up with a couple of observations. This is a composite slide where we've taken the sellers and the buyers from last year, and the question was, you've completed the transaction. Do you believe prices in your neighborhood will be up, down, flat, I don't know, in the next 12 months? And as you look at the sellers, you can see just how downtrodden they are. Most of them say flat or down, you know, for prices. They're thrilled to have that transaction over. Look at the buyers. I mean, don't you think it's interesting that not even one buyer said, I think prices will be down in the next 12 months? I mean, so I interpret that as they don't really care. They have a great home. It's more home than they ever thought they could afford. They have a fabulous 4% 30-year fixed rate mortgage. They're thrilled, right? They're very positive. So again, part of your job is being a kind of a psychological counselor a little bit, right? And being very empathetic. So with the sellers, need a lot of empathy. The buyers, you just need to kind of hold them down a little bit to the realities of the market. The Pew Research Center did a study released last year called Home Sweet Home, still 5 years after the bubble burst. They found that 8 in 10 Americans agree that buying a home is the best long-term investment a person can make. They also found that 8 in 10 renters would like to buy a home at some point in the future. So that's pretty great. Let me, again, I'm kind of wrapping things up. One of the really challenging and fun parts of my job is staffing CAR's strategic planning committee with several other staff members. And we read a lot of books. So we've read That Used to Be Us by Friedman and Mandelbaum. We've read the Steve Jobs biography, which I highly recommend. What an interesting person. And Once Upon a Car, you know, Bill Vlasic is a reporter for the New York Times, and he essentially is looking at Detroit for, 2005 to 2011. I am not a car person. I read this in 2 days. It was fascinating to see how the different companies handled things. Ford didn't have to go bankrupt because they mortgaged themselves early on, right? Even the Blue Oval got mortgaged. And they brought in Alan Mulally, who I think is going to be retiring soon. What an interesting guy. He comes in, he's had 30 years at Boeing. And they had to really court him to get him to come to Ford at that time. It's like, oh my goodness. And he walks in and people are a little bit skeptical, because we're like Ford and we make cars. And he kind of said, look, I've spent 30 years at Boeing. The product that we make has 2 million parts. I think I can handle an industry where you've got 10,000 parts. And went on to really make some wonderful decisions. And in fact, Ford is making a great car again. So I highly recommend it. It's just a really great look at Detroit. So if I were you, what would I take away from my remarks today? Well, with respect to the economy and the market, it would be 5 points. 1, the worst is over, but we're in a slow recovery. Rates will be attractive through the end of 2014, and if they're not, it'll be good because it will mean the economy's growing faster than we expect. The Eurozone crisis is a wild card that could have a huge effect on us if ... The secondary mortgage market is a huge policy issue for the real estate community going forward, and aggregating data on the market today is not particularly helpful. Looking at the REO market, the short sale market, and the traditional market separately is much more useful. I have some friends that sell real estate in LA, and when they're a team, and when they meet with clients, they have 3 folders. And each folder has a presentation and data on each type of market. So they know, we can go and put in an offer on that short sale. Here's what it could look like. Here's what the data says. You know what I'm saying? So really setting it up. In terms of how you do your business, I made this point earlier, I'd use aggregate statistics as a jumping off point to talk to people about local market conditions. Really simple. NAR puts out their March 2012 market report. You send it to them and said, you may have seen Lawrence Yun on CNN this morning talking about the national housing market. Here's what's going on our island, and put 5 bullet points, done. You've done your monthly touch. Talk to your clients about communication. What channel, how often, are you a morning person? What's the deal? Cut your response time in half or whatever is a stretch objective for you. Audit your own website. In fact, what I would do is I would pick, do this with the map of the US and say, okay, I'm moving to Rochester, New York. Go and see what the websites look like for the realtors and what attracts you. Who would you want to work with if you were going into an area that you didn't, just kind of a different frame of focus. And then my final salvo here is kind of a fun back to basics pitch. We had a top producer come into CAR last month and speak to the CAR staff, and I'd heard him speak a couple of times and was thrilled that he was able to do it. And he's a top producer and definitely type A, and we're not all ever going to be like this, but it was really interesting to hear how he set quantifiable goals and achieved them. So he moved from Colorado to California, knew no one. For the first year, he held an open house every day. Every day. Christmas, New Year's, Mother's Day, every day. When he's, having a weekend and has to meet with a new client, he goes home and puts on a suit and tie. That's his brand. His brand, I've only ever seen him in a suit and tie. And he feels, look, I have one opportunity to make an impression, He doesn't work with agents who don't take care of their shoes, He feels like that's an indication, right? I don't know if you heard this story, and I can't remember if it was the Rolling Stones, it was some band. And I remember hearing that they would, there was a huge penalty in the contract if they hadn't taken all the red M&Ms out of the bowl of M&Ms, something like that. And I remember thinking, oh my, are you kidding? And then I read more about it, and what their strategy was, if this venue gets that right, I can relax about everything else, right? If this guy can take care of his shoes, they're shined, they're not worn out, I know that they're going to do a good job in my transaction. The other thing that he does is he writes 10 handwritten thank you notes a day. He keeps a list of who he needs to thank. He says, look everybody, at the end of the year, I will have written 5,200 thank you notes. No, 360, well, a lot, right? 200 times whatever. A lot of thank you notes. He said, listen, I am going to be successful to spite myself. I can't help but be successful. I've touched so many people. And so we all just kind of talked more about it, and just, it was back to basics. It wasn't rocket science. You know, most people that are successful in real estate have absolutely no problem coming to a venue like this and telling you exactly what they do. Because describing it isn't hard. It's just hard to bring your best game to life every day, isn't it? I mean, it is. But it's something to aspire to, and it's something to really think about, because who can't write a few thank you notes a day to just tell people that you appreciate them in their business, you know, and it has an impact. So anyway, with that, it's been so fun to be here. I appreciate you all coming. I appreciate the geese, and I wish you all a great 2012. Thank you.